When I discovered that my wife had been in bed with another man twice and was about to do it again, I was completely devastated. I've read about all the emotions that overwhelm a person when they realize that a marriage they thought was solid and reliable has become a fiction. When the flood of emotions subsided, there was nothing recognizable left in my marriage. Everything had gone. Trust had disappeared, respect had vanished, admiration had faded, concern had evaporated, love had gone. All that was left was devastation, and it was so overwhelming that I gave up and left. That's what I would have wanted to do with my marriage. I would have given up and walked away. There was nothing worth trying to save. My wife had twisted our life until everything became a pile of garbage and unrecognizable. It was all over. Susie and I had a fight. It wasn't an unusual fight. We had these kinds of arguments from time to time, like most married couples, but this one ended very badly. Susie tried to convince me to remodel our living room. She said the furniture was outdated, that she was tired of it, and wanted to redecorate the room and change the decor. I explained as clearly as possible that the furniture was not old, it was only 2 years old, it cost a lot of money, and I wasn't going to spend a large amount on new furniture. She kept telling me that she was tired of it and wanted something new. I probably made a mistake and escalated the argument when I said, "I guess you're tired of me too, right? You just want to go to bed with someone else because you're tired of me, because you can't be happy with what you have." She sarcastically replied, "Well, maybe I should go to bed with someone else. Then maybe you'll realize what you had and what you could lose." Of course, I got angry too and shouted, "Well, decide what you want in life, Susie, and just get it, but don't expect me to be here waiting for you when you come back." Then she touched a nerve when she said, "I probably should have married Bill instead of you. Maybe he wouldn't be as terrible as you." She acted like a red flag to a bull. I literally yelled at her that I never wanted to hear her name mentioned again and that I wouldn't buy new furniture no matter what she did or said. End of the argument. I stormed out of the house and went to the club to have some beers. I was furious and needed time to calm down before talking to her again. Bill had always been my main rival. He was the golden boy in our community. Everything he touched turned to gold, with one exception. He had his eye on my wife many years ago, but she was in love with me, not him. They met a few times during the short period we were separated. He had his sights set on her and almost succeeded, but not quite. She really married me. I worked hard at my job and earned a very respectable living, in fact, more than respectable. Bill just looked at the project and started making money from it. I've been in the business for many years, and my reputation has steadily grown thanks to hard work and honesty, but everyone around assumed that Bill was an authoritative and reliable person. He never had to prove anything about himself. I was jealous of his successful life. I didn't envy his position in business. I was raised to work hard, be honest and reliable, and never envy someone's success, but I was a little sensitive, well, jealous when it came to Susie. I'll always remember that they met, that he touched her. It was around 9 o'clock in the evening when my mobile phone rang. I looked at the number. It was my home phone. I decided to send the call to voicemail instead of talking to my wife at that moment because I was still quite stressed and had also had a few beers. I thought I might say something unpleasant that I would regret later. Sometime later, I listened to her message. "Larry, I called to say I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I realized it wasn't enough anyway. I called her back because you should. Since you won't be coming home soon, I think I'll just go out on my own for a while. See you later." It wasn't enough. I had just started to recover from our fight, but now I was angry again. I served myself another beer and drank it in a couple of minutes, then went to look for her. I went through all the bar parking lots in town and didn't see her car. In the end, I thought maybe she had gone with someone she knew. So, I went to Patty's best friend's house. Of course, her car was parked in front of the house. I went to the front door and knocked. A minute later, Dave, Patty's husband, came to the door and asked me, "How are you, Larry? I heard that you and Susie had a fight today. They're not here, they decided to go bar hopping tonight." Well, Dave, I didn't see Susie's car at the bars. So, I thought maybe she was here with Patty. Could you tell me what car your wife drives so I can look for them? She's on a night out. I think they were starting with a bachelor party. If they eventually come back here, he added. I left and went straight to the bachelors. And, of course, Patty's outing was in the parking lot. I thought about going in directly and confronting Susie face to face, but I was still a bit drunk from the beer I had consumed. And I thought maybe it would be better if I just sat in the car for a while and sobered up before having another drink. A few minutes after 11 at night, they came out, got into Patty's car, and left the parking lot. I followed them at a safe distance, and as Dave said, they headed to the downhill bar and went in. I stayed in the parking lot a little longer, just observing what was happening. I assumed it wouldn't be long before they headed to the next place, and I was not wrong. Exactly at 11:30, they went to the place that I thought would be the next and final stop before returning, a pub and a hotel. And when midnight struck, Patty came out of the hotel, got into her car, and left. What's going on? I wondered. How badly was Susie going to behave by staying here? She was going to do something stupid. I knew I had to find out. I grabbed my baseball cap and team t-shirt from the trunk and put them on like some kind of disguise. I wasn't completely sober yet, so my disguise was far from perfect. You see, my name was on the t-shirt. However, I didn't think anyone would pay that much attention to it, so I figured it was better not to wear any disguise at all. A few minutes later, I sneaked into the pub and found a secluded spot where I could watch what was going on. That's when I saw Susie with Pill. Yes, she was with Pill. They were sitting at a table at the back of the bar, as far away from the entrance as possible. I noticed that there was an empty bus right behind Susie, so I moved there as stealthily as I could. However, I didn't have to worry. Both of them were so engrossed in their conversation that they wouldn't have noticed a water buffalo climbing onto this bus. From where I was sitting, I could hear their entire conversation, except for a couple of times when he must have leaned in to kiss her and whisper something. "Thanks for coming, Pill." "I didn't want to keep Patty all night," she said. "No problem," Pill replied. "You know I love it when you and Larry fight. This is the only time you let me have a piece of you. 7 years ago, you two separated, and I enjoyed you for a while. And twice more since you got married. I'll be happy to give it to you once again tonight in revenge. I wish you two would fight more often than you do." "Well," she said, "you know I love him, but when he gets on my nerves like today, I can't help it. I need revenge sex just so he won't be the winner." As I listened to this conversation, the realization that she had betrayed me twice in the last 6 years of our marriage and was planning to do it again tonight hit me hard. She could have said anything about how she loved me madly, but her actions proved otherwise. She was with Pill to get back at me, not to let me win, as she said. It's not love, it's a selfish and indifferent entity, and it has caused all the changes I mentioned. You're right, or not, this conversation destroyed me and destroyed my love. Don't tell me I'm stupid because I won't listen. That's what it is, and I knew I didn't love her anymore. I almost cried for such a loss, but it was already over. I waited for a while, wondering how long it would be before they headed to the room. And sure enough, I heard them say, "Well, Susie, are you ready?" I could almost see the smile on her face. I knew she would be there because I heard the words he said to her, and she always smiled when she said them. Fortunately for them, they got up and headed for the elevators. I was ready to explode. Maybe I was lucky because I believe I could have actually caused serious harm to his health. Sometime later, I followed them to the lobby. I couldn't tell which floor they were staying on, so I approached the receptionist and asked him to call Pill's room. "Major," the phone rang 3 times before he answered, and I asked with a trembling voice, "Is this room 312? He replied, "No, this isn't 312. "Why the hell are you calling at this hour?" and hung up. I asked him to call his number again, and when he answered, I said, "Well, I thought it was 312. "Are you trying to deceive me, right?" "It's 312, he said. "No, this isn't room 312, but room 422. "And if you call here again, I'll ask the manager to call the police." He slammed the phone down. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and walked down the hallway to room 422. I listened at the door until I realized their actions were in full swing, and then I knocked on the door. I heard him shout and protest. I enjoyed it a lot because I knew I was about to ruin his party. I stepped away from the peephole so he couldn't see me, and when he opened the door a crack, I slammed it with such force that the safety chain broke off the door frame, and the door swung open. There on the bed lay my beautiful wife naked, as on her birthday. When I burst into the room, she screamed, and her face turned completely white. I'm surprised she didn't faint. Oh my God, no. Oh my God, no, Pill stammered as he recovered from the shock when I burst into the room, and he yelled at me, Larry, get out of my room. I'm going to call security. Susie, you're a terrible woman, I know everything. I heard you at the bar, and I know everything. Don't bother coming back home tonight, that would be a big mistake on your part. Oh my God, no, Larry, let me go home. I can explain. It means nothing to me. I love you. Oh my God, no, you didn't hear me, she begged. Don't make the second biggest mistake of your life and don't come back home, I told her, and I turned around and walked out the door. Actually, I was surprised I could be as calm as I was. Now I know I was quite verbally rude to her, but it could have been much worse. When I got to the car, I got in and just sat there for a while trying to calm down even more. I also decided to wait a few minutes just to see if the police would show up or if Susie would leave with Pill. About 15 minutes later, Bill left the hotel, got into his car, and drove away. A few minutes after he left, Patty reappeared, and Susie came out and got into her car. At least it made me glad that they didn't stay in the hotel room after I left. Not that the damage hadn't already been done, but it would have been adding insult to injury, or as they say, pouring gasoline on the fire. That gave me an idea. I went home and went to bed. I don't even know what time the phone rang, and the caller ID showed it was Patty. Larry, I know you're upset with Susie, and you don't want her to come home, but I wanted to call you and let you know that she's staying with Dave and me so you don't worry about her. Patty, I won't worry about her anymore. I don't care anymore. You didn't have to wake me up. By the way, what time is it now? It's 3 in the morning, Larry, and you can't tell me you don't care. I know you love Susie, and she loves you. She's here, and she's crying a lot about how stupid she was tonight and wants you to forgive her and let her come back home. Patty, she can't come back home. Ask her if her stupidity goes back to the other 2 times she was with Pill before tonight. Oh my God, no, Patty said after I hung up. I'm lucky I don't have a serious hangover, and besides, I stopped drinking quite early in the evening. So even though I was very tired, I was awake around 8 in the morning. At 10 in the morning, I was ready to face Susie. I called Patty at home and told her Susie could come back home if she wanted. I was standing at the entrance when she arrived a few minutes later. Dave and Patty followed her to our house. I'm sure they were there to make sure I didn't harm her physically in any way. When Susie got out of her car, her eyes were wide open, and she asked, Larry, what's that pile in our front yard? Susie, that's everything that would remind you of me, everything I've ever given you, everything you've ever given me. These are all the photos from our courtship and our 6 years of marriage. I can't remember a single thing that would be left in the house to remind you of me. I even brought the old furniture out here so you can go buy a new one like you wanted. And one last thing, this, and I lifted our wedding photo. I went to the side table next to my chair and placed a photo on it. I took a few steps back to the driveway and tossed a lit match onto the trail. The gasoline I had spilled over all these things ignited, and the flame quickly spread to a pile of memories of me. It didn't take long before everything was engulfed in flames. It was an inferno. There wasn't much left but ashes and charred furniture frames. I looked at my wife, who was clearly in a state of shock, and said, You've won, Susie. I heard you tell Pill that you never wanted me to win. I hope it was all worth it. Our marriage is over. You can take everything else. I don't want anything from this marriage. I just hope I won't remind you of me either. You'll get the details from my lawyer. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of sirens approaching from across the street. A police car pulled up, and 2 officers approached to ask what had happened. A couple of minutes later, the firefighters arrived to extinguish what was left of the smoldering mass. The gasoline did its job, and the pile turned into ashes and charred debris in a matter of minutes. I was only burning the remnants of the marriage. Officers, I apologize for the trouble I caused. Needless to say, I was taken into custody. When they took me to the patrol car, I looked at Susie, and I saw that she was crying. I spent a couple of days in jail, and a psychiatrist was called in to evaluate my sanity. Surprisingly, they found that I was distressed and devastated but sane. I think they would have let me out sooner, but they wanted to observe me for a couple of days just to be sure. I paid the bail and went to pick up my car from the parking lot at my office. All the things I wanted to leave were in the car. It was mainly my clothes and some other personal belongings. I went to the nearest motel and rented a room for a few days until I could find an apartment to rent out a few weeks later. I was fully settled and began to move on with my life. My trial began, and I pleaded guilty to all charges. I was fined $5,000 plus court costs. It was a small price to pay to destroy my ruined marriage. Susie contested the divorce and kept leaving voicemail messages on my mobile phone, begging me to talk to her, to forgive her because it meant nothing to her, to take her back. I left a message on her home phone when I knew she would be at work. I said, "Susie, you tell me it meant nothing to you, but it meant everything to me. Do you understand? It meant everything to me. Goodbye." I never heard from her again. The divorce was finalized, and I gave her everything she wanted. I just wanted it to be over. Pill's wife found out about all this, divorced him, and really left him high and dry. It seems Susie wasn't the only wife he consoled when they were having trouble with their husbands. A couple of weeks after I walked into the hotel room and found him with his wife, I ran into Pill in that same bar. I must have caught him off guard because he didn't have time to get up and flee. I leaned on his shoulder while he was sitting on a bar stool and told him I was almost certain that if he stayed in town, he would definitely get into a serious accident. When his divorce was finalized, he started liquidating what was left of his possessions. And soon, his absence in town became noticeable. Strangely, not many people really missed him all that much. Well, I secretly hoped you would stay in town. Every now and then, I run into Susie on the streets, and each time she tells me how sorry she is and asks if I'll call her to talk. I just nod and walk away, and to this day, I haven't called her. But she keeps asking. Who knows, maybe someday I'll call her. Story 2. My wife and I have been together for 20 years. We met in our freshman year of high school, and we have been together ever since. She and I both lost our virginity to one another. We went to prom together, and we even went to the same college after graduation. We got married right after we graduated from college, and we settled down to start our life together. Having a family was always something we were looking forward to, so once we had good jobs, we decided to start. Fast forward about 11 years, and we have 2 kids. We own our own home, and we are on a fast track to retire early so we can travel and do all of the things we never had the chance to. I thought that we were living the dream life. All of that came crashing down when my sister-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was my wife's best friend, and she took it very hard. She was with her every step of the way while she was fighting as best as she could, but in the end, she passed away. It was a huge blow to the entire family, myself included. It's such a cliché, but she was just a beam of light in the world. My wife took it harder than anyone else. My sister-in-law was whom my wife would go to when she needed to talk about anything. They would go shopping together, and they knew everything about each other. I was there for my wife while she grieved the loss, and I helped her get over the worst time of her life. After about 6 months of mourning, my wife started to get back to herself. She had all of my sister-in-law's journals in her notebooks, and she read through all of them while she was grieving. I couldn't even begin to process the types of emotions she must have been feeling, such as trying to be supportive and lend an ear when she needed it. One thing that got to my wife was feeling like she hadn't done anything with her life. Her sister was taken way too soon. Through the journal entries, my wife realized that her sister felt like she didn't get to do enough in her life. I guess when my wife read all of that, she thought that her sister would have wanted her to do the opposite. She told me that she had been inspired to start living. She wanted to travel, go skydiving, and just enjoy the life that she had while she had it. I wholeheartedly agreed with it. That's why I had been working 60 hours a week since I graduated college so we could try to retire early. Over the next few weeks, she started doing more things. For example, she started taking pottery classes because she'd always been interested in it. She had been teaching herself how to rock climb because she wanted a free climb, and she even scheduled a bungee jumping excursion for her and her son. She seemed to be leaning into this new lifestyle. I didn't think anything of it. I was happy for her because she was recovering from the loss of her sister. One night after she came home from the climbing gym, she was acting off. Before that, she had been very upbeat and excited about everything while she took on this new lease on life. After dinner, when the kids were in their rooms, she pulled me out to the patio, where we shared a couple of glasses of wine and looked at the stars. Toward the end of our conversation, she brought up the possibility of both of us having a hall pass. For those of you who don't know, a hall pass in a committed monogamous relationship is a one-time opportunity for both partners to have sex with someone outside of the relationship. I was completely shocked by what she had suggested. It felt like it came out of nowhere. So, I asked her why she was bringing it up. She assured me that she loved me but felt like she might have been missing out on a part of her life because she had only ever been with me. She tried to say it in a way where I wouldn't be hurt, but it was impossible not to feel horrible when she said that. I told her that I wasn't supportive of the idea. She and I had been married for 20 years, and I didn't understand why it was a problem all of a sudden. I didn't want to sleep with anyone else, and I wasn't okay with her sleeping with anyone else. We were about to go back inside, but I stopped and asked her if there was someone she had been interested in sleeping with. She was hesitant to tell me the truth, but after a few moments, she told me that there was another person who went to the climbing gym that she was attracted to. She told me that he had always been flirty, and recently he asked her out for drinks. I was assured that she said no and that she would tell him that she was married, but I still went to bed that night with a sour taste in my mouth. It took a few days for me to come to terms with what she had suggested. I was unbelievably hurt by it, but after some time, I forgave her, and we carried on as if the conversation never happened. After a week or so, she told me that the climbing gym offered a class to start working outdoors, and she wanted to sign up for it. One Saturday, she went out early in the morning with the class, or at least that's what I thought was happening. Our daughter had been entering those years where she started lying to us about where she was going so she could go to parties and hang out with friends we didn't approve of. So, we told her to leave her location on Snapchat maps so we could verify. That same afternoon, our daughter was supposedly going over to a friend's house, so I checked the maps to make sure she wasn't lying. Everything was good on our daughter's end, but I noticed that my wife's avatar was in the heart of the city. I was a little confused because I had been told she was going to a park about 30 minutes outside of the city. I zoomed in on the location and saw that she was at a bar. I tried to rationalize it, thinking she was just hanging out with some of the other people from the climbing gym after they got back from their climb, but I had a sinking feeling in my gut that I couldn't ignore. I remembered what she had said about the guy from her climbing gym asking her to go out for drinks. I didn't think it was that far of a stretch to wonder if she was there with him. I was home alone, and the bar that she was at happened to be about a 15-minute walk from the house, so I grabbed the dog, and we took a walk. I kept my eyes on the map every so often just to make sure she was still there and she wasn't leaving. When I got to the bar, I looked in through the windows and saw my wife sitting at a table with a man. They were both leaning close together and smiling from ear to ear as they chatted. The man reached across the table and grabbed my wife's hand, and my wife let him. Of course, hand-holding isn't necessarily cheating, but it was an indication that maybe there was something more going on. I went home before my wife saw me there and waited for her to get back. The entire time I waited, I didn't know if I was going to confront her about it or try to dig around on my own. She came home and, before she even said anything to me, she went right to the shower. I tried to grab her to have a conversation, but she just told me that she was gross and sweaty from climbing. That solidified in my head that something happened while she was with that man. She had dropped her gym bag down near our bed, and I noticed that her phone was still inside. I pulled it out and looked through it to see if I could find any information about who that man was. I searched the name of the bar in her text messages, and I found a chat between her and an unsaved number. I scrolled back to the beginning of the conversation, which happened to be about a week before she asked me about the hall pass. I skimmed through the rest of the messages looking for keywords that would indicate an affair. Eventually, I found a few exchanged pictures and some explicit messages. Then I saw the plans for them to get together at the bar. They even came up with a lie to tell me and his partner together. I had no idea who that guy was, but I was able to find out by looking through the climbing gym's social media. They had posted a few pictures with some of the clients, and he was clearly in one. He was tagged in it and everything. I did some digging and found out that he was married with a newborn baby. I was disgusted by what I saw. Hurt doesn't even begin to describe the pain that I felt. I had been with my wife for 20 years, and she was willing to throw all of that away because she wanted to sleep with another man. I was furious, and I was so disgusted by the foul actions both of them had done. At the end of their message chain with no context was the name of a restaurant, with a date and time. A week had passed since I discovered my wife was cheating on me, and I had come up with a plan to catch her in the act. While I was thinking about it, I realized that the wife of her affair partner deserved to know as well. When the day of the meeting was supposed to take place, I sent his partner's wife a dozen roses with the information for the restaurant on the card. I hoped that it would be a way to trick her into thinking he had a surprise plan for her. I waited outside of the restaurant, and I saw her head toward it. I followed her inside, and we both noticed our partners holding hands at the same time. She rushed right over to him and started yelling at him in front of everyone. My wife was shocked to see me, but she jumped up and tried to tell me that it wasn't what it looked like. Then I asked her to explain the text messages, and she went silent. I told her that I would be ending everything between us and that she could expect to see me in court. We spent the next 8 months in a divorce battle over what happened. The biggest issue that we had was custody. We both wanted primary custody of our children, but in the end, we were given joint custody. I was able to keep the house, and she was entitled to no spousal payment from me. Her affair partner was also divorced, and he was forced to pay child support and alimony to his ex. And I only recently finished the divorce proceedings and were finally done with each other. I honestly don't know what to do from here. I had only been with one woman, and she stabbed me in the back, and I'm not sure how to move forward. OP, I can't believe you went through something like that. Understandably, your wife was curious about experiencing new things after her sister's death. That's obviously where the idea came from. It seems like she was grieving in some way, but when you told her you weren't comfortable with the hall pass, she should have respected it. It's interesting to see how quickly she disregarded your feelings, saying you were uncomfortable with it. I think she must have been feeling guilty about even considering it, otherwise, she wouldn't have offered you the opportunity to do the same thing she wanted. Not only did she cheat on you, but she cheated on you with someone who just had a baby, and that's truly horrendous. Not one, but 2 families were ruined because of the relationship they had. I hope you're able to move on past this. I know it's going to be difficult after dedicating so much of your life to someone else, but hopefully, you'll find someone who will truly value you and your family. Story 3. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years before my entire world fell apart around me. I thought that she was the one for me, and I even planned on marrying her. However, she cheated on me with my cousin to begin with. She and I met at a nightclub 3 years ago. She was the hottest woman there, and I didn't think I stood a chance at getting far with her, but I had to try. Surprisingly, she was interested in me, and we went out the next day. We had been together ever since. She moved into my apartment a year and a half after we started dating. It seemed right, and I didn't question if it was too soon or not because I was head over heels in love with her my cousin, who used to live down south, ended up accepting a job position in New York where we lived. I was able to talk to my building manager to get a decent apartment set up for him since he couldn't come to the city to look for one himself. I was stoked for him to be close by. We had always been good friends when we were younger, and we often played games online together. I thought it was going to be nice having family close by. Once he was all settled in, we would hang out with each other quite often. He would come over to our apartment because I had a nice gaming setup, and we would play. He was never shy about letting me know he thought my girlfriend was insanely attractive. He was my cousin, so I never thought he would act on any of his feelings, so I would laugh it off and agree with him. I never noticed anything going on with them while I was around. She wouldn't sit next to him, they wouldn't really even talk much, and they seemed to respect each other's personal space. So, a few months after he moved in, I was grabbing coffee with a friend. I thought it was just going to be me and one of my college buddies, but he actually showed up with his new girlfriend. I was a little shocked to see him there with her because she was actually my girlfriend's work friend. We were trying to set them up at a party, but we didn't think they were hitting it off very well. Apparently, they had been keeping things low profile because they didn't want to put any pressure on their relationship. I thought it was so funny that they were together, and I wanted to surprise my girlfriend with that news because I knew she'd love it. I texted her and told her that she should come to the cafe because there was a surprise I wanted her to see. I got a message back shortly after that she couldn't because she was hanging out with her friend. The friend she told me she was hanging out with was the one sitting right across from me at the cafe. Obviously, she was lying about what she was doing, but why she was lying was what I couldn't understand. I ended up lying to my friends and telling them that my girlfriend had a migraine and needed me to bring her some medication, so I left the cafe and went right home. When I got there, she was nowhere to be seen. However, I could see that she had makeup on the bed, and she had clearly tried on a couple of outfits. I was really nervous that something was going on that I didn't know about, and I needed to talk to someone about it. I walked down the hall to talk to my cousin. There was loud music playing in the background, but I knocked on the door for a minute until he heard me. I heard a lot of shuffling around, but he opened the door a moment later. He tried to laugh it off by telling me that he had company and that he would come over later. Again, I had no reason to think that my girlfriend was cheating on me with my cousin, so I didn't assume it was her in there. I didn't assume it was her until I saw a shirt that I bought her for her birthday on the arm of the couch behind my cousin. I played it cool and nodded my head and went back to my apartment that day. As soon as I got there, I looked around for any other signs that she was cheating. I ended up going into her laptop and looking through her Facebook messages with my cousin. Doing that completely broke my heart. I saw that my cousin had reached out to her and asked what it was about me that she liked so much. She told him that she thought I was funny and had a good personality, but he replied saying that I didn't seem like her type. He told her that he was her type. My girlfriend didn't disagree. They were extremely flirty, and at one point, she messaged him the classic "just got out of the shower" message. After that, they sent a couple of suggestive pictures with some very sexual messages. Earlier that day, my cousin had messaged her that he couldn't stop thinking about her and that he needed to be with her. He told her to come up with some excuse to go to his apartment, and she did. I knew it was over between my girlfriend and me, and I was going to be cutting my cousin off from my life entirely, but I was definitely going out there with a little trace to everyone I knew. I took screenshots of everything that I saw, sending them to myself so I had it in case my girlfriend tried to lie. Luckily, my name was on the lease, and hers wasn't because she moved into my apartment, so I would at least get to kick her out. She came home a few hours later, and right away I told her to get out. She was confused, but I told her that I found out about her and my cousin, and that I wanted her out of the apartment or I would file a legal complaint. I left for the night and told her that she had 48 hours to leave. While I was away, she and my cousin had both called me dozens of times, but I ignored every single one of them. While I was gone, I gathered all of my relatives into a group chat and I told them everything about what happened. Everyone was so disappointed in my cousin for doing what he did. His parents were even in the chat. They all apologized profusely, even though they didn't do anything. Shortly after, I got a bunch of messages from my cousin where he was calling me a coward and telling me that he had members of the family messaging him and telling him that he was a scumbag. I didn't really care. He was a scumbag. My girlfriend and I had a lot of the same friends, so I put all of them in a group chat and told them about what happened as well. They were all completely shocked by what they heard, and they were on my side. While I was talking to them, a couple of the girls in the chat told me that my girlfriend was trying to call them to ask for a place to stay. They felt bad, but they said no because they didn't believe that what she did was right. I went back 2 days later, and my girlfriend was out of the apartment. I had no idea where she'd gone because all of her friends had decided to ghost her. I found out that she ended up staying with my cousin. However, their personalities clashed quite a bit, and he ended up kicking her out after a week. From that point, I have no clue where she went. I guess I learned that you really can't put your trust in just anyone, not even family. OP, it seems like your cousin was close to you, and I'm sorry you had to cut someone from your family off that you care about. It's such a shame that he would value sleeping with a woman he didn't really even care about over his relationship with his family. Your girlfriend was clearly already interested in him if she was able to give in to what he was saying so easily. Karma got her in the end. I can't believe how coincidental it was that she lied about being with a friend that you were with. At least you know you have the support of your friends who all took your side when you told them what happened. It's good that they ghosted her because she didn't deserve any sympathy for her actions, and it seems like she might have been looking for it. After, I hope that you can move past this and carry on with your life without worrying about the same thing happening again. Story 4. I was married to my wife for 4 years, but due to her alcohol problem, our marriage was rocky. Before my wife and I were married, I knew she had a thing for alcohol, but I didn't think it would become a problem in the future. She was the type of woman who loved to drink and party. The first time we met each other was at a club. The moment I saw her, I liked her instantly, and I approached her and her group of friends. She and her friends had come to the club to celebrate a birthday that night, and that was how we talked and spent the rest of the evening at the club together, after meeting each other for the first time that night, we went home together because she asked if she could come home with me. On the first night, we got intimate. My wife said she thought I was one of those men who wanted to tap her honey pot, and that would be the end. But for me, it was different. I liked her so much, and getting intimate with her intensified my feelings for her. In the following weeks, we met at least twice a week, and after 3 months of spending time together, we started dating. By this time, she was freshly out of college and did one of those small, hourly paid jobs until she could get the kind of job she wanted. As I mentioned earlier, I knew my wife had a drinking problem from the first few weeks we met, but I didn't think it would get to the point of seeking help from rehab. After a year and some months of dating, my wife and I married and officially moved in together. Unfortunately, a year after we got married, she lost her parents and only sibling in a ghastly motor accident, and this was when things got worse. Losing her parents and only sibling in one day took its mental toll on her, and she resorted to drinking to help her deal with the pain. When her drinking got extreme, I thought it would only be for the mourning period, but it wasn't. After the burial, months passed, and my wife did not get over her family's demise. She became a shadow of herself, and though I had tried to comfort her, I understood that she was in a very dark place mentally. But I tried my best to support her in every area she needed support. Unfortunately, around that same time, she got pregnant but miscarried the baby, which added to her agony. She also stopped working, and caring for us fell on me. On the days she wasn't drinking, she would be aggressive and get mad over things that didn't require such anger. I once walked in on her making out with one of my neighbors, and I was furious. She was high on alcohol, and he seemed sober. I kicked the neighbor out of my house and reported him to his wife. But I couldn't do anything to my wife because I believed she wasn't in her right senses. Well, I was wrong because a couple of days later, I saw her talking to the same neighbor, and when she saw me coming, she walked away from him immediately. Meanwhile, by this time, her drinking got worse. If I gave her money, she would spend all of it on alcohol, and it got to the point where she couldn't go a day without drinking. I got so frustrated, and I was tired too. I was tired of tolerating her, paying the bills alone, and still caring for her. It was already choking me, and I decided to get her help when I had no other option. I told her I was taking her to rehab, but she was hesitant to go until after a series of persuasion. Or the first 3 months she went to rehab, I noticed a significant improvement, and I was glad I was getting my wife back. As the concerned husband I was finally at peace as she had broken out of her bad habit and was finally getting her life together. I was wrong. One day, I was at home enjoying some YouTube content on my phone when my wife came home to tell me that she was getting married to the love of her life. When she said this, I didn't pay much attention to her, and I just laughed it off. But when she mentioned her rehab coach's name, my ears perked up, and I asked her to repeat what she said. According to my wife, her rehab coach, Ryan, was the one for her, and she told me they were in love with each other. She also said that she loved Ryan because he treated her like a queen, talked to her nicely, and so on, and they would get married. I was shocked when I heard that and knew she was going nuts. The Ryan she was talking about was already a married man with 2 kids, so it didn't make any sense. I was also sure she did not come up with the whole marriage thing on her own. So, I was forced to confront Ryan on our next meeting day. When I told him everything my wife had said and how they were planning to get married, Ryan said she was delusional. Somehow, my wife had heard all of his responses. She had been eavesdropping on our conversation. The moment she heard him, she came out of her hiding place with her eyes filled with tears. She literally sobbed like a baby, and at the same time, she showed me a video of her and Ryan together in bed and in the bathroom, naked. She had Ryan record the video of the last time they were together in a hotel, and he sent it to her. She even said Ryan promised to divorce his wife so they could get married. When she showed me the video, Ryan was so pissed, and he called her names for being dumb enough to believe that he would leave his wife to be with an unstable woman like her. His words broke her heart. After losing her family, I had never seen my wife crying like that. At that point, I understood that she loved Ryan as she claimed. She even planned to divorce me so she could be with Ryan, which was heartbreaking for me. I was so mad at Ryan for taking advantage of his client, my wife, and to give him a taste of his medicine, I pressed charges using the video my wife showed me as evidence in court. Sharing this here is easy because the hurt and heartbreak I felt almost shattered me. Despite all the tough times my wife had given me, I still loved her and tried to get her help so that things could go back to normal. But she cheated on me in return and even planned to divorce me to be with her rehab coach. Anyways, I still felt pity for her because she was utterly heartbroken after she found out Ryan was using her, and she nearly fell into depression. Out of pity, I had to submit her to a mental hospital for more watchful care, and after she was admitted, I divorced her. Even though it seemed like she was not in her right state of mind, she was in the right state of mind to think of divorcing me. Honestly, our relationship was a serious waste of my time, resources, and emotions, but I'll consider it as one of the lessons of life. I'll give a piece of free advice. Some women are not worth all the sacrifices most men make. Even if you give them the universe, they will still have an excuse to cheat. As for Ryan, I won the court case, and he got a jail term for taking advantage of his mentally unstable client, and the government shut his business down. I often miss my wife, but I cannot use her problem as an excuse for her to break our marital vows and cheat on me. OP, your wife might not have been in the right state of mind, but she was in her right mind when she planned to divorce you. It's painful to do your best for the woman you love, tolerate things you wouldn't have, put your life on hold for her, and in the end, she cheats on you with a flimsy excuse of her AP treating her like a queen. You handled this well. Her AP is right where he needs to be, and so is his wife. I'll give you a piece of free advice too. Time heals everything, so take as much as you need to heal from this. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Story 5. Because I wouldn't want our identity to be disclosed, I will be using fake names for this post. My name is Jason, and I was in a relationship with my ex-girlfriend Bella for 5 years. Bella and I met each other at a unisex salon. To be precise, she worked at the unisex salon as a hairdresser. The first day I met her was the first day she resumed work at that salon. She was friendly, and we got along well. I know I liked her from the onset, but I didn't think we'd become so close and fall in love. After visiting the hair salon several times, I asked for her number, and by this time, we were familiar with each other, so she couldn't say no. You know how the story goes. We went out together, got to know each other, and love happened. And when love happened, we ended up dating for 5 years. Personally, the main reason we didn't settle early was because I had been deeply hurt in the past by my ex-girlfriend, so I wanted to take things as slow as possible with Bella. And after 5 years, I decided it was time to tie the knot officially. Shortly after I asked her to marry me, we started the wedding preparations. 2 months before our wedding, Bella broke the news that she was pregnant, and although that wasn't part of our plans, I was happy, and I believed it was the universe's way of blessing us with an early wedding gift. Originally, Bella and I planned that we wouldn't have a child until 3 to 4 years after we were married. By then, we would be all settled. In the past, she had an abortion twice, and I didn't want that for her again, so we decided we would keep the baby. Sincerely, it wasn't easy planning for a wedding and a child at once. It was even worse because Bella insisted we had the kind of wedding she had always dreamed of. She wanted us to use a venue, rent an expensive gown, and do a couple of other things that required a lot of money. It wasn't like I was the only one financing the wedding. She had been saving some money for it too. But I believed it was better to use most of our budget to lease a bigger apartment since we were expecting a child and also take care of other necessary things. But she refused. She claimed our marriage was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we had plenty more years to take care of our child and consider him before making any decision. So, after I thought about it, I saw her point, and we went ahead with the kind of wedding she wanted. We booked a venue and paid for the type of cake she wanted after tasting a few. She paid for her gown, hairdo, and other things she had to take care of with her bridesmaids. Deep down, I was so excited. I was getting married to the woman I loved, and I was even happier that she had not cheated on me once in our 5 years of dating. I believed she was a faithful partner who would remain faithful until we grew old. But I was wrong. So wrong, I went far too deep into the future when my present was already a mess. I didn't know that while the wedding plans were going smoothly, and I was pumping my savings into making her dream wedding a reality, Bella was cheating on me with someone close to me. I would never have found out if her jealous lover had not come clean a night before our wedding. I went home early that evening to drop a few things so I could join my friends for my bachelor's party, which was about to begin in 2 hours. Just as I reached the house, my best man called and asked if we could meet somewhere because he had something important to tell me. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the bar we were hanging out at that night. On getting there, I noticed he looked unsettled. As soon as I sat down, he apologized in advance and told me he needed to get something off his chest. I was even a bit scared that he was about to cancel on me the night before my wedding. But what he told me was far worse than canceling on me. Straight to my face, my best man told me a little history of him and Bella and claimed he loved her so much and could not watch us get married. When he started saying everything, I thought he and my other friends were pranking me, and I kept looking around for someone recording us or any of my other friends, but immediately, he showed me a sensual picture of him and my Bella together. My heart sank. He even showed me a text Bella had sent him before he called me, and it said something about him sneaking into her hotel room later at night so he could make her feel good for our wedding. Seeing that message cleared all my doubts, and I tried to hold back the hurt as a man, but I couldn't keep in the tears. That wasn't all he told me. He was responsible for the baby Bella was carrying, but they planned together for her to tell me it was mine so I wouldn't think anything was off and break up with her. He also disclosed other things that made sense, and at that moment, I felt my world stand still. There were thousands of thoughts going through my head, and it was difficult for me to accept that the woman I loved and had very high expectations for in our relationship was carrying my best man's child while I was doing all the necessary preparations, thinking the child was mine. I was so mad that if it were possible to see my head lit on fire, my best man would have seen the smoke. When I had heard enough, I got up in anger, flung the chair I was sitting on, and walked out. I was trying to control my anger, but when he followed me and held my arm, I punched him in the nose by reflex. Then I drove off. As soon as I got into my car, I called the wedding venue to cancel the venue and other things I had made part payment for. I even managed to get home in that state without passing a limit. Immediately I got home, I cried like I had never cried before. While I was crying over Bella's wicked betrayal, she called to ask if I had canceled the wedding venue because she got a call from them. I told her I did. From my voice, it was obvious I had been crying, so when she asked if everything was fine, I didn't beat around the bush. I told her I knew everything, and our wedding was officially called off. It took her a couple of minutes to understand what I meant, and when she knew that I knew, she started crying and begging me over the phone. Throughout that night, she kept calling, even when I told her I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Also, I didn't sleep at home because I knew she would come over to try and beg me to show how terrible she was. She even texted that we should get married, and we would sort out everything after the wedding. She said this because she could not stand the shame of having her wedding called off the night before, especially after bragging to her friends. Our wedding was never held, and to date, I cannot forgive her for what she did to me. Everything I did for her in 5 years of my life went down the tube just like that. I wish cases like heartbreaks and infidelity had a place in court because I would have dragged her there, and I'd ensure she paid for all the years I wasted on her, the pain she caused me, and everything I invested in her. Since then, we haven't seen each other, and she didn't have the courage to face me after I called off the wedding. I moved into the house I rented for us as a surprise, and daily I'm healing and moving forward. To my surprise, after everything turned out like that, my best man, who was my former close friend, tried to reach out to me to apologize for hurting me and breaking my trust. He even tried to tell the story of how their affair started, but I wasn't interested in hearing his story. I told him we could no longer be friends, and he had no place in my life. Since then, we haven't made contact, and I'll never speak to him again. Call it childish, but I don't care. Anyways, Bella did not keep his child. She aborted the baby as payback to him for ruining her life, and they are not together anymore. I have learned my lesson and will never love deeply again. Most times, I wished I had channeled all the resources, investments, and sacrifices I made for our relationship into my life. It would have been way better than wasting time on a promiscuous woman. But like they say, when there is life, there is hope. OP, this was such an ultimate betrayal, and there's nothing childish about not speaking with a close friend who betrayed you like that. On the bright side of things, you just dodged a bullet and got relieved of the burden of raising another man's child. I know all the years, time, and emotions are gone, and nothing can bring them back, but you could consider this a blessing in disguise. Sadly, you ended up with a cheating woman, but there's nothing you would ever do to make things right or stop her from cheating. You have to keep healing. You owe that to yourself. Forget about your ex-girlfriend and your terrible friend. They don't deserve you. I wish you all the best with your recovery from this.